a condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks, when you have a member of the Republican caucus who has talked about Jewish space lasers and an entire amount of tropes, and also elevated her to some of the highest committee assignments in this body. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology. My life was threatened. Thank you.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, once again, because she is still melting down over the fact that Ilhan Omar got rightfully removed from the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and she went to CNN to complain even more after her epic meltdown that she had on the House floor, where she magically turned into a black preacher. And unsurprisingly, she didn't really focus on what Ilhan Omar did, what Adam Schiff did, and what Eric Swalwell did to get removed in the accusations against them. She focused more on attacking Republicans and pointing the finger at them and trying to point out the hypocrisy, again, instead of actually addressing the real issue. Take a look.
It is about political revenge in the case of all three of them. Political revenge for Adam Schiff for his work on the impeachment of Donald Trump. Political revenge with Eric Swalwell in the his incisive ability to communicate against the Trump administration and the wrongdoings of the Republican Party. These individuals that Kevin McCarthy has chosen to appoint to committee. George Santos claimed that his grandparents were in the Holocaust. That was a lie. A disgusting lie. Marjorie Taylor Greene regularly trafficking in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Paul Gosar inciting, these are individuals, Marjorie Taylor Greene included, inciting violence against specific members in the body. He has appointed all three of them to House committees, not just one, but multiple. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was engaging in 9/11 conspiracy theories, Kevin McCarthy appointed her to the Homeland Security Committee. So there is really no consistency here, and it needs to be very well known that this targeting of Ilhan Omar is because the Republican base finds it easy. The Republican base finds it politically self-rewarding.
Yeah, so I find it to be absolutely hilarious. AOC complaining about lies while going on CNN and lying herself, okay? First and foremost, when she talked about Eric Swalwell being removed and the reason why he was removed, did you guys hear her ridiculous explanation saying that the Democrats don't like his his ability to speak or something like that, right? And it's like, no, AOC. It's about the fact that Eric Swalwell banged a Chinese spy, okay? He put some white sauce in her shrimp fried rice, okay? That is what he did, allegedly. I just love how every time Democrats talk about that, they leave that part out of it, right? They don't want to talk about the real reason why he is being removed. It's because he's a national security liability. And then she wants to talk about George Santos, who the Democrats are obsessed with. And I love it because I personally think that George Santos should step down himself. I don't think Republicans should do anything about it. But the more the Democrats complain about George Santos and direct all their attention at him, the more I actually want him to stay in Congress, right? I'm just like, nah, you shouldn't resign, right? Because if Democrats direct all their attention at George Santos, now all of a sudden they can't act like they're trying to fight for the American people, right? You know how they are complaining about what the Republicans are doing in Congress? Well, what are you guys doing? What are your agenda? Your agenda seems to be nothing but focused on George Santos, who happens to be Latino and gay. So I don't know, man. Using Democrat logic, maybe I can say all these attacks against George Santos are, homophobic and racist, right? And xenophobic, okay? That's how it's supposed to work. Because this is the same type of logic that you're using when it comes to Ilhan Omar and the Republican criticism of her and her anti-Semitic, right? Or anti-Jewish, really, comments, okay? You're saying that it comes from a place of racism, sexism, and Islamophobia, not the fact that she actually said things that were anti-Jewish or anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, whatever you want to call it, okay? But again, it's not just AOC pulling a race card here. You also have the cackling hens on The View in the mainstream media also agreeing with AOC and the Democrats that the criticism of Ilhan Omar just comes from a place of bigotry and hatred. Take a look.
So yesterday, the Republican-controlled House voted to boot Congresswoman Ilhan Omar off the Foreign Affairs Committee, saying that she has no place on the committee because of anti-Semitic comments she made in the past. But the Congresswoman claims she is the victim of right-wing racism.
Well, listen, if it's not revenge, it's certainly Republican hypocrisy.
Yes. Yeah.
And look, you know, I am not a fan of Ilhan Omar. I disagree with her vehemently on most of her foreign policy views. I think she's dead wrong on Venezuela, on Cuba, on Israel, on many issues. And I say that because the fact that I disagree with her doesn't mean that I think this is okay. And why is this hypocritical? Because at the same time, they're booting her off a committee for having said anti-Semitic remarks, which she apologized for. They are elevating and embracing Marjorie Taylor Greene. Sure. And so let's just go down memory lane of some of the stuff she said. She said Jews started forest fires with space lasers. She said January 6th was done by BLM. She said Pelosi should be executed. She said school shootings weren't real. She said COVID-19 is a hoax and belittled the significance of the yellow star of the Holocaust in order to do it. And they're also embracing pathological liar George Santos. Yeah. And let's think about his recent lies. He said his grandparents fled the Holocaust. Right. In his campaign bio, he said his grandparents fled the Holocaust, and he said it in an interview. So you know what? It is the height of hypocrisy. It is hypocrisy that should make every American, whether you like Ilhan Omar or you don't, whether you think she's right or you think she's wrong, it should make us all be disgusted by what's happening in Congress.
I have to say about her, though, something that she said that I'm not sure. I mean, I get what you're saying. Believe me, I understand that because the right wing is very hypocritical. But she said that she did not know that what she said that was construed as anti-Semitic, she didn't know that that was what they call a trope, a Jewish trope. And that she didn't know that. That people equate money with Jews, for instance. I don't believe her.
Well, I do. I think she's an immigrant. I think she's had a different experience.
She's been here a long time.
I think that's a trope that's largely you hear it in this country. So I'm not surprised that she didn't know. And
that is not a trope. Excuse me. Well, that is not a trope that is just here in this country. That is a worldwide trope.
And maybe it's everywhere. Let me just say this. But the other piece of it, Joy, is that I take her at her word that she didn't know, and she nevertheless apologized and met with Jewish members of her caucus. The other thing I think is, I don't think this is hypocrisy. I think it's pure racism, and I think we should call that out when we see it, and we hear it, and we look at it. I don't think it's hypocrisy because she was elected in 2018, I believe. Yeah, 2018. She has been the subject of targets, racial targets or racialized targets since then. Donald Trump said during one of his rallies in 2019 that she should be sent her back. Other members of the caucus, of the Republican caucus, have targeted her. And so the suggestion somehow that it's merely hypocrisy, I think, devalues what this really is, and that's racism against a Muslim American
Couldn't it be racism? Absolutely. She's experienced racism. But with her, the hard part is that I think there's hypocrisy involved here, which taints the water, because you cannot have Paul Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene being put back on committees and then saying, oh, this is about anti-Semitism.
Yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous, right? This line of rhetoric, this idea that Republicans are being hypocritical for putting Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar back on their committee assignments is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to tell you guys why. Okay, well, first and foremost, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar have already been punished. Okay, are you making the argument that they should not be allowed on any committees ever again? Is that the argument that you're making? Because, again, first and foremost, all the stuff they're complaining about in regards to what George Santos said and what Marjorie Taylor Greene said, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene said those things before she was in Congress. And George Santos said those things before he was in Congress. Ilhan Omar said all of those things while she was a sitting Congresswoman, and she was not punished for it, right? Again, I don't understand how you can make the argument that it is hypocritical to put somebody back on their committees after being punished for something that they said before they were in Congress, while also taking off somebody or punishing somebody who was never punished for the things that she said that were allegedly, again, anti-Semitic while she was in Congress. Because we all know that it doesn't matter what Republicans do. If they apologize, if they say sorry, if they meet with, people or whatever, it doesn't matter. They're going to get punished, right? Regardless. Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene got punished for something that, again, she said, I mean, she really even said that because she liked a comment on Facebook before she even was in Congress, okay? So again, they're not the same. This is a false equivalence that these people are making, acting like they're the same situation. It's not. Also, on top of that, they continue to lie about Marjorie Taylor Greene and this idea that she said something about Jewish space lasers. No, Marjorie Taylor Greene did put out a conspiracy theory in which she talked about space lasers being used to start forest fires and stuff like that. Okay, and she just so happened to say that the space lasers were, I guess, owned by the Rothschilds, who happen to be Jewish, right? So now they're saying, oh, well, Marjorie Taylor Greene said Jewish space lasers, right? Which she never actually said the term or the phrase Jewish space lasers. So again, Democrats they're lying and they're misrepresenting what Marjorie Taylor Greene said to try to spin it as if she actually came out here and said something like, they're using Jewish space lasers or whatever. And that's not what she said, right? She just said they're using space lasers that happen to be owned by people who are Jews, okay? She never actually really called out Jews directly, okay? So again, this idea that Marjorie Taylor Greene is trafficking, anti-Semitic, conspiracies or whatever, like openly, okay? At least more so than Ilhan Omar, or where it's the equivalence of what Ilhan Omar has said or done or whatever. It's just ridiculous. It's not. Again, because one, she didn't say what they're saying that she said, and then two, she didn't say it while she was in Congress like Ilhan Omar did, right? And then they want to talk about Paul Gosar, okay, who was punished for allegedly threatening AOC, in which AOC, broke down in tears. Oh my God, Paul Gosar threatened me, blah, 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 right? While at the same time, cozying up to him and talking to him, in Congress, okay, as if, she doesn't feel like her life is in danger. She was actually asked about this on CNN, okay, about her conversation with Paul Gosar, despite the fact that, again, allegedly she felt threatened by him. And then AOC used that opportunity to basically call Republicans terrorists. Take a look.
I think both of us were in alignment on.
Did you feel safe sitting there with him?
I think it's uncomfortable serving with people who engage in what many experts deem stochastic terrorism, which is the incitement of violence in an incitement of violence using digital means and large platforms, so that individual themselves may not be the one that's wielding a weapon. But I have had to ride, as has Representative Omar, consistently had to ride in 20,000-pound armored vehicles, engaging in some of the most gruesome threats that you can imagine that were incited by Republican members. This is not just about a tweet. It is about what life looks like and the marshaling of hundreds, thousands, if not millions of people into doing something. And Donald Trump knows that very well, and he uses and used his rallies very strategically in order to engage in political intimidation of what he deemed his political enemies.
You think Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee?
I mean, we may see. He will either be the nominee or he will burn down anyone who isn't him.
Yeah, so this line of logic coming from the Democrats in regards to, again, any criticism of us is racist, right, or xenophobic or whatever. This probably explains why the Biden administration refuses to shoot down the Chinese spy hot air balloon, right? Because if they shot it down, they would probably say, oh, it's xenophobic, right? It's anti-Asian violence, right? That's probably what they would say, which is why they're not shooting it down. Again, that's how woke this administration is. That's how woke these Democrats are. And AOC just looks like a damn fool, right? You look like a damn fool accusing Republicans of being terrorists, okay, or engaging in terrorism, claiming that you feel like your life has been threatened, right? While, again, being caught on camera, cozying up to the guy, laughing and kikiing and ha-ha with the guy that you claim you're afraid of, right, that he's going to take your life, while you yourself, like, you're actually engaging in what you call, what is it, stochastic, right, terrorism or whatever. No, you're engaging in that yourself, by one, supporting the Roe v. Wade rioters who are actively engaged in terrorism, refusing to condemn Antifa, and supporting the BLM rioters as well too. Okay, you support the most domestic terrorism that we see in this country, but yet you're trying to accuse other people of engaging in terrorism when, again, you yourself, you're basically a terrorist movement ringleader at this point, right? Let's keep it 100. If what you say is true about Republicans, then what does that make you? Again, considering all the political violence we've seen in response to movements that AOC supports. Again, Roe v. Wade, BLM, Antifa. AOC unequivocally supports all of those movements and all the violence that they do in those movements because she's refused to condemn any of the violence as a result of those movements. She's always been silent. But yet these people want to lecture other folks on terrorism and also want to cry victim, boo-hoo, woe is me, when they get a taste of their own medicine, when the pendulum swings back the other way, right? And what really frustrates me is the media not actually really holding these Democrats accountable and saying, well, maybe this happened because look at what the Democrats did to Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar last year, right? Do you think that that was a precedent? Do you think that you guys set a precedent that, this could happen, in future where you have a majority party take advantage of this power to punish the minority party? Do you think that you guys are responsible for kind of setting this up to happen in the first place? No. They never ask those questions. Right? They just let Democrats talk and play victim and boo-hoo, whine, and cry. Whatever pressure on the fact that they're the ones that are hypocrites. Because they, if they were so against this, should have stood up for Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar when the Democrats were trying to remove them, or when they did remove them from their committee assignments. Because if Democrats had not done that, there would not have been a precedence for this. Right? So again, I don't want to hear the complaints. I don't want to hear the crying. They can, play victim all they want. But again, it's their fault because they should not have engaged in the overreach of power that they did in the last congressional session against Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar against Republicans if they didn't want this to happen. So again, it is what it is. I just find it, again, fascinating how these people want to boo-hoo, whine, and cry racism when they all know in their heads exactly why this is happening. Right? It's their fault and it's nobody else's fault but theirs, and they have nobody else to blame but themselves. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.